Okay, everybody. Bart, are you ready to take over?
Yeah, we can get started. Let's see, I better get in. Oh, no, how do I get from here to share? Oh, down here's where I share the screen. There, that isn't what I want. I want a different one right here. Okay, what I'm going to talk about today is the flow of your pictures when you edit. It's for newcomers especially. It took me, I only recently really figured out how to do it so it's efficient. When you start off with editing, people the majority of people either start with Lightroom or with Photoshop. And you think of them as separate programs, and you like one or you like the other. The fact of the matter is the two programs do a lot of things that overlap, but they also do two different things that are unique to each of them. And the way the programs are set up, you can share things between the two, and it allows you to really come up with a nice flow that makes things efficient, especially like when I come back from a cruise. I take, sometimes I'll go 2 weeks and come back with close to 4,000 pictures with me, and just going through and figuring out which ones to use and not to use can be problematic. And Lightroom allows me to do that, allows me to do some preliminary editing, but on some really difficult things where I have to change things in different areas of the photograph, I also have to do some things in Photoshop too. So we're going to show you the complete process from the camera through your how to set up the files so you can run efficiently and so forth today. So I'm going to start off by just showing you how my computer is set up. This is how I do it. You can do it the way you want. The main thing is to have your 3 backups. So I have a 27-inch iMac. It's a 2010 version, so it's dated. It has a 1 terabyte internal hard drive. If I kept all of my photos on that hard drive, I'd run out of space so fast it would be ridiculous. So I don't store my photos on the hard drive other than during the time that I'm editing them. I run 2 backups. I have a backup on that says internal. It should be an external hard drive, 4 terabyte. All my hard drives, by the way, are Western Digitals, and I back up the main stuff, everything on the main hard drive to that. When I'm editing photos, I have a separate system for backups, and that system includes a photo editing hard drive, which is a 5 terabyte MyBook hard drive. And then I have a Drobo, which has been talked about here before. I have a 5-bay Drobo, which means I can put up to 5 drives in it. I don't use all 5 drive positions. A Drobo is a system, it's a RAID system, a redundant array of independent drives. And there's different types of RAIDs. There's one type of RAID where if drive 1 gets filled up, then it automatically starts saving your additional stuff in drive 2 to drive 3 to drive 4 and 5 and so on. What I use is what's called a RAID 2 format, which means that all of these drives have exactly the same information on them. So if one drive fails, the others have that information remaining on them. On top of that, the Drobo has an interesting feature on it where if I have 2 or more drives in it, basically if one of these drives loses some data, up to a certain amount of data loss, it can actually repair it on that drive and keep everything going. And if a drive is going to fail, it gives me advanced warning of it. On top of that, the drives are hot swappable, which means I can remove them and replace them without turning the power off. Now you'll notice down here on drive 4, I've got a little arrow here to my bank safe deposit box. What I do, I actually have 5 drives. The 4th drive, every time I get done with an editing session, which might be once every 2 weeks, it could be a lot longer. It's not like a professional, day-to-day business where every single day I'm doing editing. What I do is when I get done with editing, I take that drive 4, I go over to my bank, I take the drive that's in there out of the safe deposit box, put the one I just got done within the safe deposit box, put it back and stick it in the Drobo so it's ready to continue saving all my photos. That way I basically have 3 different methods of backup, and I'm not having to pay monthly for iCloud storage. I don't have the issue of someone else having control over my photos at any time. Now, let's talk about how you actually file your photos. What we do, we have the memory card in your camera. Now, when you shoot your pictures, if your camera has the ability to shoot raw photos, use that format, not the JPEG. The reason is, and it was touched on when we were discussing with Allison a few minutes ago, the raw format has all of the data that your camera captures. JPEG is a compressed format, and you lose data every single time you access those files. So if your camera allows it, shoot in RAW. Now what we do is we put, we do not want to use, I don't use the cable from the camera to the computer to download photos. I take my cards out of the camera and I put them on the SD cards. On most Macs has a slot that will directly take an SD card. In the case of CF cards or the micro SD cards, there's adapters that are available, and I use one of those for my CF cards. Okay, so I'm going to take the photos from that memory card, and I'm going to transfer them to the computer. Now, I am not going to use a program that automatically transfers them for me. I'm going to treat that memory card just like any other device on your computer. So I'm going to copy and paste my photos, but we'll get into that momentarily. From the computer, I'm going to, we're going to be going back and forth here from one end to the other, and you'll see this when I start to actually show you in Lightroom and Photoshop. But we're going to move stuff to the photo editing hard drive, which is where I keep everything. And for each new set of photos that we are going to produce, we're going to have a master folder that's going to be identified with the date that the pictures are taken or the date that we're editing them, and some sort of identifying title that we'll recognize. And then we're going to make 3 folders inside each of these folders called Raw, Edit, and Finished. So that's what I'm going to show you today is how to do that. And the first thing we're going to do is we have to, with Lightroom, there's something you have to understand about it. It's a two-step process to bring your photos into Lightroom. The first thing you have to do, let me bring up Lightroom so you can see it. And by the way, we use we subscribe to the $10 a month Adobe Cloud Creative Cloud service. So the versions I'm showing you are the Creative Cloud versions. Adobe sees to it that they're always the latest and greatest capability. There are currently, they just came out with 2 different versions of Lightroom that you can use, what they just call Lightroom, and now they also have what they call Lightroom Classic, which just used to be Lightroom CC, and this is the full version of it. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do here, you'll notice that there's various catalogs here, but I've got new pictures I want to bring into the computer. By the way, if anyone has any questions, be free to ask them. The first thing I have to do is create a new catalog. So I'm going to click here. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a new catalog on the desktop of my computer. So I'm going to give it a name. Let's call it OACC demo. And you'll notice here I have my desktop selected, and I'm going to click Create. And you'll see right over here, it's created the file folder. And now Photoshop Lightroom is opening up. But as soon as it opens up, we're going to go back to that folder because we have to do some things there. Greg, is everything working okay? Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Things are so quiet, I was thinking that maybe people weren't seeing me or anything.
Well, no, I can hear you and see you. Greg shows that he's muted.
Oh, okay.
And his picture is replaced by the Apple logo.
Okay, so what I'm going to...
We're listening with rapt attention.
I'm back.
Okay, so now what we're going to do, that file that I created, that, let's see, where is it?
Beautiful, sharp shot, by the way, Bart.
Thank you. 1 minute, this isn't the, is this, did it make the catalog like it was supposed to? Oh, here it is, right here. Okay, now I want you to notice something in here. You'll notice that when Lightroom made the folder for me, it added 4 files here, okay? These files tell that basically are what Lightroom needs to do its job. The most important one here I want to call your attention to is this one here. It says .lrcat. That file is going to save all of the changes that you make to your photos in Lightroom. Lightroom is what we call a non-destructive editing program, and it's like photos in that it doesn't actually save your photos. It saves a list of changes that you make to the photos, and then whenever you want to show the photos, it basically looks at that list and recreates those changes for you. Lightroom also made these files here, and I'll just show you some. Some of them have things in them right now, some of them don't.
You are trained in technology. That's
And anyhow, what we're going to do, let me go right here. Oh, that's one. I want to be back one. No, I guess it's, oh, okay, I got it. Oh, oops, right here. This is where I want to go. I want to create the three files that I showed you on that diagram here. So the first file I'm going to create, I'm going to call it raw. I don't want to put it under there. I want to put it there. And then I'm going to make the next file, and I'm going to call this one edit. By the way, one thing I forgot to do here, I'm going to make a slight change here to the title on these. I want to put in, just so that you can keep things straight, I'm going to number these so they'll be in order in here when you look at them. So I'll call raw number 1. There. And then we'll make one more for our finished edited photos. And we'll call this 3 finished. Okay, now we're ready to go into Lightroom and actually start doing things. So let me go back to Lightroom. And the first thing we have to do, we have to import the photos, okay? Understand this, in Lightroom, Lightroom first had to set up that system there and put its things in the folder. Now we've got to go back and we've got to pull the photos that we want to edit into Lightroom. So the first thing, oh, I forgot to do this. This is very important. The first thing I got to do, let me insert the SD disk or the SD memory in here. And what I'm going to do, here's photos. This represents what would be in your what you took in your camera. I'm going to highlight them all, and I'm going to copy them, and I'm going to go into our file, and I'm going to copy them in 2 places. First, I'm going to copy them into the raw file. And then I'm going to also copy them into the edit file. Now, when we're done with everything, we've done all of our editing, and we've got maybe our output, we want to have JPEG files or whatever. In this edit file, we're going to basically dump all of the raw files from there. The raw folder, we are never going to touch the photos that are in the raw file, because those are our originals. They're just like in the old days, your photographic negatives. You don't want anything to happen to them. You don't want any possibility of corruption. So this will take a minute or so, and we'll get all of our files transferred, and then we'll go to Lightroom. Any questions so far?
No problem so far. So good.
Now I'm going to remove the SD card. Where's the eject? Right there. I'm going to eject the SD card and take it out of the computer now. That way, less chance of having something bad happen to the pictures on there. Although, quite frankly, when everything's done, I erase my SD cards, or I'd be constantly buying SD cards. Now, we've got here, you'll notice down the side under source. Source, you might see it closed up. the first thing you want to do is go to source. Oops, what am I pushing the wrong part of the trackpad here? And I'm going to, we know our pictures are on the main drive, and I will find the desktop under users, my name, desktop, and here's the OACC demo folder. And I'll go into the edit file now. Now you'll notice as soon as I clicked on the edit file, the Lightroom started to populate my desktop with all of the pictures that were taken. They are not actually in Lightroom yet, okay? But before we put them in Lightroom, this is just sort of a preview mode, we have the opportunity to do what I call first cut editing in terms of going through and picking which pictures we want to use and therefore will import, and which ones we're not going to use, and therefore why waste the time importing them. So I've got like 4 pictures here. These were all taken in Tracy Arm Fjord in Alaska. And I don't want to import this one. Now you'll notice, by the way, something that's a good habit, before you start doing this, click check all down here. Does everybody see where I'm clicking? And that way you can unclick the ones you don't want to use. You'll notice every picture has a white check mark in the upper left corner. If I uncheck a photo, it goes dark like you just saw, and that means that will not be imported. Now, I've got 2 here that are very similar. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to down here, I can enlarge them, and now using the right and left arrow key, I can switch between the 2 and decide which one I want to use and which I don't. This one has basically a thing where my eye is being drawn here, but I've also got this island over here. This one here, I really have one center of interest, but I think the other picture is, this one here is probably the better of the 2 shots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncheck this one. And I'm going to go through in a similar manner, picking and choosing which pictures I want to import and which pictures I don't want to import. Instead of boring you with that, going through the whole thing and boring you now, what I'm going to do is we're going to assume I've done all that. I know what I want to import, and I'm going to, right down here in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see import. I'm going to click that. Now, what you will notice, things went away. It says importing file, and now it's actually going to start bringing these photos into Lightroom. Now, it says here enable address lookup. What that has to do with it, if you have a GPS on your camera, and I have an attachment on my camera for GPS, I can click that, and that will download the GPS information. Now, up here, you will see there's a bar here that shows you your progress as you bring your various photos into Lightroom. Now, what I'm going to show you over here, while it's doing that, because it will take a little while, I want to direct your attention up here. This is called a histogram. If you have, well, actually, some of the point and shoot electronic cameras have histograms available on them, some of them don't. All of your DSLRs do have histograms on them. This is very, very important. This shows you a whole bunch of things about your photograph. It's basically a graph showing you how many pixels have what amount of light falling on those pixels. It also can show you the same information for the three primary colors, but we're not too concerned with that. What we're concerned was with the gray part of the histogram. Now what this is saying, over here on the left, that represents the darkest dark, total black. Right on this one picture here, you can see an area that, in fact, let me switch over here, and you will see, just like looking at the picture, the bulk of it is dark. You'll notice the histogram is mostly over to the dark side. The right side represents your highlights. So let's take this one here. This is a good exposure. This is showing you a normal exposure. Now, no two histograms are ever going to be identical. They're all going to be different from one another, as you see, because the light distribution on each photograph is different. The one thing that you want to avoid, if you're not getting a proper exposure, something like this one here where the bulk of your information is in the center there, it is better to underexpose than to overexpose. Even on as you'll see when we start to edit, even on a picture like this, where everything is over to the left side here, we can bring up detail in there. If it's on the right side of the screen, in terms of the whites, and you'll see this in cloudy areas like this, a lot of the detail there, in fact, zero detail on the extreme right, will not be recoverable. So you have to be aware of that both in the camera when you take the picture, and you'll see how we use it in editing it. Okay, everything is in now. Now we have a second chance at selecting which pictures we want to use. And Lightroom allows us to indicate which ones we want to use in this stage, 3 different ways. And we can use these combinations any way we want. And in fact, we can filter on them so that we only work with the final ones without losing the other ones. So for example, we've got here a system where I can click and I can put up a white flag, as you see right up here on the photo, or I can put on a black flag, which means that this is rejected, and when I sort on flags, it will not show up. It will disappear from the screen. It will still be there, as I say. I could sort by stars, 1 through 5 stars, and you'll notice your stars is shown at the bottom here. There's 3 stars and so forth. Or I can sort by color. So like the default is red, and you'll notice there's a red border around here and a little red flag here. Or I can make that green, for example, green border, green flag down there. Now, at the end of the process, after I've done that, you'll see up at the top here, see where it says none, metadata, attribute, and text. I can go over to attribute here, and I can sort. So I can tell the things, show me only the pictures that have a white flag, and boom, I only have pictures with a white flag. That I don't recall if I left the black flag on any of them, but you can do that too. No, that it's just the white flags that you can show there. Go back. I can go by rating. Let's just see the 3-star picture, or I can see a 5-star. I think I did a 5-star, didn't I? 4, 3, 2, 1. I guess I just gave you one as an example there. I can so I can do it by color. We had green, red, and so forth. So there's a lot of ways to go by attribute. Let me take the attributes off now. We can also look at the metadata. The metadata is sort of a sidecar, and every picture you take, whether it's high-end camera like I have, or your low-end point and shoots, is going to have metadata on it. And this is data in a standard format that gives a lot of very useful information. And like you'll see, what I'm seeing on this picture here was this is the file number that the camera put on it. And you'll notice the dimensions are here. It's showing that it hasn't been cropped. The data was taken. Exposure, in this case, 100th of a second at f10. Focal length on the zoom lens was set at 18 millimeter. It was equivalent to a 27 millimeter. This was taken with a Nikon D90, which is a crop frame camera. ISO, which is the speed of the film of your sensor at there, and then here's the camera and information on what lens I had on and so forth. This is not all the data that's in there. In fact, I'm going to show you something here. I took this picture here and I put it into this website earlier, and this shows all of this data you're seeing is in this data in this metadata file attached to your camera. I want to show here you've got your GPS coordinates. It even gives you a map. But down here, this is what I want to show you about non-destructive editing. Right here shows everything that was done in Lightroom when we edited the picture. So this started off as a small file, and it expanded and expanded as we did more things to it. So that's how Lightroom is going to work. Now let's actually go back to Lightroom. And let's take one of these pictures, and I'll just show you a quick how we can work with it and so forth. And what we do, let's say we've gone through, we've picked all the pictures that we want to edit. We're going to go up here into Add menu. And in this section down here, there's different modules in Lightroom. We've got the library modules, what we're in now. There's a develop module, which we're going to go into. This will show you on the map where your pictures were taken if you have GPS. You can make books, slideshows, print, or make things for the web. We're going to go into the develop module. Excuse my slow computer, that will probably be remedied this summer.
Got to get yourself one of them $6,000 iMac Pros.
Actually, I'm thinking more about totally loaded conventional iMac. Okay, so anyhow, this picture here, I want to show you. You can see here, this of these three, if you look at the histograms here, you'll see, you can see how this one is really dark, and you can see that there. This one is the best exposed. What I'm going to do is, first we're going to do some preliminary adjustments with this thing. I can go over here and I can bring up the exposure a little bit, but I don't know that I really want to bring it up that much, because this thing was taken at dusk, and I want to keep that feel to it. I can make the thing so it looks, you know, like daylight and so forth. And you are perhaps saying, what was a bloom of red in there? What that's telling me is that any place you see red, that's a tracer that tells me that I've got highlights that are what we call blown out. In other words, there's no detail in them. And you can see the way I've adjusted. I've got a lot of light in this thing, which is mainly the sky. But I've got this area right here and this area that's blown out. We'll work on that. We can adjust contrast. I can make an adjustment on the highlights here, like I can you'll notice the red went away, and I can connect and disconnect that marker there. That's not the best way to show you, like right here. Right now it's showing you the highlight. If I click up here, it takes that marker away. I like to work with the marker on because I do want to. So I'm just going to move to the point where it just goes away right there. Now, I can also have the same thing if I want to, let's show an overexposure on this thing. And you'll notice that we have things blooming in blue. Same thing up here. You can turn that on and off. And that tells you the areas in the darkest part of the photos where there's absolutely no detail because we're underexposed in those areas. So I'm going to bring it up, and I'm going to bring it up in an area that's about what I want for the mood of the picture. And we'll say it's around here. Now, I'm going to go down. We've got these presence controls here. Clarity is basically the sharpness, and I'm going to enhance sharpness a little bit on this. When you shoot in RAW, you do lose a little bit of sharpness in the raw information, and you have to recover it. It's not that we're taking a picture that was out of focus and putting it in focus. The picture was in focus. We're just bringing up the detail to show that. I'm also bringing up the vibrance that will enhance the color a little bit. But you have to be very careful with these controls, because if you bring them up too much, on most photos, it will make it look very unnatural. Like, you know, that isn't what it looked like. Unless you're looking for some artistic reason to do that, you want it to look pretty good. So let's just give it a little there. Now, here's another area that's very useful for you. And most of the other things that this thing will do, you probably aren't going to use. Right here on the chromatic and the profile corrections. What this does, this will literally correct for the lens and camera that you are using. What I want you to notice on your screen, with this disabled, this is basically showing me coming out of the camera what the picture looked like. Every lens has some aberrations on them, which are most apparent at the along the edges of the photograph. And what this is doing, this is electronically compensating for my specific lens. And you'll notice here, it not only it stores the camera, it knows what lens that I had attached at the time. And I have several lenses, and each lens, I put it into Lightroom, it will tell me what lens I used, and it will correct specifically for that lens. The other thing that you might want to use occasionally is this dehaze, especially on a picture taken at high noon. Dehaze can help you make things look a little better. Now, I've got a situation where this was dusk, and I want to darken the sky a bit, probably to bring out some color and so forth. But I'm not going to do that in Lightroom. For that, I need a little bit more control. So what I'm going to do, I'm now going to put this picture into Photoshop. And the way we're going to do this is we're going down here and we're going to hit Export. Now, the first thing it's going to bring up is this export box here. And the first thing I want to do is choose where I want it to export it to, and the demo, and we want it to go into the edit file, which right now you'll notice has all of those. NEF is the Nikon extension for Nikonic electronic file. Canon has their own file extension and so forth. The other thing I want to do down here is I want to make sure that for image format, I'm always exporting as PSD. This is the format that optimizes the ability of Lightroom and Photoshop to work together. I also want to use an sRGB color space, and in fact, I calibrate my monitor with a calibrator to make sure that my screen is showing me true colors. And I'm going to open it in Photoshop here, and I'll hit export. And now what it's going to do, and this takes a little bit of time, it is going to, first it's going to actually open Photoshop for me, and then it's going to bring the photo into Photoshop with one intervening step. As I say, this will, here we go. Photoshop starting to open now. Now, for every, by the way, I could have, by highlighting them, I could have imported or exported multiple photos into Photoshop. For each photo you are trying to import, you'll get this little pop-up here, and you always want to use the embedded profile instead of the working space. So we'll just click OK there, and boom, we're open. Now, I want you to notice that we started off with a raw file, and we exported, and you'll notice the file extension up here is PSD, which is that Photoshop file. It's still my hard drive is still doing things there, so let me do this. It's still not up. Settling down now. Let me see. Will it click? It should be able to. There we go. Now let me just deselect there. Okay. Okay, so this is our picture as we got it into Photoshop. Now, Photoshop is a destructive program. In other words, if right now I start making changes to this and save it, it's going to save only the changes, and it's not going to preserve my original. So the first thing you always want to do in Photoshop when you're working on a picture, you click Layer right up here, and right here, Duplicate Layer. Now when I do, I want you to watch right over in this area here what happens. Layer, Duplicate Layer. It asks me for a background copy. I click Yes, and boom, here's the background copy. Here's my original, and you'll notice this little lock here. So I can't accidentally screw up my original starting point. And what this allows me to do by doing all my edits on the background copy, if I make a layer on here and decide that, gee, I screwed up this layer, I better take it out, I'm not going to affect that original copy. I can, worst case, I can always start off from here by making a new, by dumping everything else and making a new duplicate layer. So the first thing I probably want to do here is, you'll notice there's some color in the sky here because it's at the sunset photo. So I'm going to want to bring that color up a bit. I'm first going to try the magic wand because that does a lot of color selection for me. But the problem is I can add on to it. You know, there's a lot of things interrupting that similar space there. And I can add to the selection. And now I've added some other areas, but at some point, if I keep using the add to the selection, and this is what the bad point is about this whole thing, it will take areas more than I want, but so far it seems to be working okay. You'll notice, well, let's see this area here, I want to do it. What I'm going to do, instead of boring you while I go through and actually do all of the areas so that I'm basically covering everything that you see as sky, I'll just pick this much of the sky and you'll get the idea of what I'm going to do. I'm going to create what's called a layer mask now. And I'm going to go, I don't mean a layer, clipping mask, excuse me. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to click on clipping mask, and you'll notice so far nothing has happened. But if I go down here, and where are my layers? If I go down here and I go to new adjustment layer and do brightness and contrast, it gives me a layer name. I'll just use the default. I click that. And now you'll notice I've got a new layer here. And what that is, you notice the black around here, that's this area here, and the white is the area that my changes are going to affect on this photo. So now I can go up here and I can use the density here. Oh, minute, this is density. Did I screw up? This should. I made the wrong kind of layer. I already did. So what I'm going to do, let me redo this. Let me just dump this in the waste paper basket down here. Yeah, let's do it this way. Should be able to drag this down. Oh, actually, I can basically cut that out altogether and just make a new layer. Oh, I got to redo this. I'm just going to do that much of it and we'll give you the idea. Okay, let's go down, new adjustment layer, brightness, contrast. There we go, that's what we wanted. Okay, so now I want you to notice the changes are only affecting the area that was highlighted by the mask. And this is one of the features that really makes Photoshop stand out. And there's a whole bunch of different things. The purpose of this program is not to show you how to use Lightroom and Photoshop. The main thing is to show you the workflow, how we're moving the file through. So let's say that I've got this edited the way I want, and now I want to save it. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is do a save as. And you'll notice it knows that I want it to go and edit because that's where it was before. But I want to indicate that this file has been edited in Photoshop. So I'm just going to put a P. You can do anything you want with it. I'm going to change that PSD file, because the PSD file that Lightroom brought over has all the original stuff, and I might want to use that again. But in this case, I'm going to save the changed one. You'll notice down here in the lower left corner, you see the progress bar as it's saving the PSD file. Now, at this point, I'm going to click Save As again, and now I'm going to save my file, final picture. And what I want to do, I don't want to save my final picture in Photoshop because most people won't be able to open it on their computer. JPEG is the most universal. There's a whole bunch of other formats, but I'm going to save this as a JPEG file. And I want to ultimately save it in the finished file folder. But unfortunately, the way they design this, unless there's something that I don't know, and Greg or one of you guys can jump in here, I don't see a way to really navigate with Save As. So what I'm going to do,
Bart,
yeah,
click click off in the box, but off the menu to get rid of the menu.
yeah.
See that little down pointing arrow next to the file name? No, up higher. Right there. Click that.
That's just the,
Now you should be able to navigate.
oh, okay.
Now
Oh,
you can navigate to anywhere on the computer to save that sucker.
oh, okay, super, thank you. I learned something new. Okay, so now we're going to go to our,
That'll be $5.
okay.
That'll be $5. PayPal gladly accepted.
I'll pay you when I see you this summer.
Yeah.
And then where do I save it?
And by the way, I think it will remember that setting, so you might not have to click that down arrow again. Notice the down arrow changed to an up arrow. So
Oh.
I think it will stay like it is until you manually change it back again.
Okay, now this is where I can, I always save my JPEGs at maximum size unless it's being used for a specific purpose. For example, sometimes I'll want to upload it, and the site that I'm uploading it to has a size, file size limitation on it. Then I'll adjust it here. So let me click OK. And we're saved. And at this point, I could close the whole thing, but what I want to show you is let's go into our file again. And we'll notice here's our original raw files. Here's the edited files. Now you'll notice the one PSD here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to arrange them so that they're by application. And this way now, my PSD file is separated from all of the NEF files. So we're assuming, of course, that I'm at the end of the process here. I can take all of these NEF files and I can drop them in my wastebasket. Oh, I have to, there we go. And now I'm left with two PSD files. The original one there, and then the one that I edited in Photoshop. Now, the other thing, I'll go into Lightroom, and here I have my finished JPEG. And that's basically how you flow things between the two programs and get things set up. Now, as to backup, what I would normally do is you'll notice I've just got my photo editing file here, and I'll open that for you, show you what that looks like. And you'll notice that I have not followed that date followed by the title for any of the folders. That's because I recently took a course and learned how to do that part of it. So what we're going to do is I will take this OACC demo, which I will no longer want on my desktop. So I'll do a cut, or copy rather, I guess. And I'm going to put it over here, paste. And I have to put in my And while it's copying files there, what I'm going to do is turn on my Drobo
Okay, so Bart, you use the Drobo interactively whenever you need it. That's when you power it up and use it, right? And then when you're finished with it, you shut it down, correct?
Yes, and the reason for that is that if I left it on all the time, by turning it off when I'm not actually transferring photos to and from it, I'm basically protecting it in case anything comes in, any hacks come into my computer or something like that. It's isolated
Right.
from those influences. And it takes a while for the Drobo to boot up.
Yeah, I believe it runs all kinds of system inner disk checks and all that kind of baloney to verify that everything's up 100% before it lets you do anything.
Yeah, in fact, let me do this first. What did I call that? Oh, it's under the O's.
OACC demo.
Yeah, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to rename it. And I'm going to put the date in it. It's 021018 space. And I got to do this again. Oops.
That photo editing hard drive must be owned by a different user account.
Oh, yesterday I made a mistake and spelled the account with 3 C's. Today I used 2 N's in it. Okay, and you'll notice the Drobo is now on my desktop, and it's also over here showing that the Drobo is up. So I'm not going to do the actual backup. Let me just show you something on the Drobo. I guess I have to get out of the share screen. I forgot. How do I do that now? Oh, I got to go over here, don't I? No, how do I get out of the share screen here, someone?
Click up there where it says share screen.
Oh, I see it. Yeah. Let me get out of there. Let me just show you the Drobo, and I'll show you what it's like on the inside. Let's see, can you see it? Let's see, it's right there. And this doesn't show it. Well, maybe I can move it a little bit. Okay, does the lights here?
Yeah, you're good. You're good. It shows up.
Okay, now currently I have 3 drives in it. These lights here are showing each of the 3 drives, and this is showing the percentage that the drives are filled, and that doesn't mean the percentage. Each drive is looking, they're all mirror images, but just to show you, this panel is held on by a magnet that completely surrounds the cover. These are the 3 drives I have in here right now, and I'll just show you how they're hot swappable. I can take this drive out, and by the way, Drobo recommends, and I use the Western Digital red drives, and I can take.
I think that's Western Digital's most stable drive. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's their best drive.
I'm trying to do this at an angle with the sunlight in my eye, and I can just stick it back in there, and pretty shortly it will boot up. You'll notice these lights are flashing green and yellow while it's trying to boot up this drive here, and they'll change to green. These all of these LEDs here, they can go red, yellow, or green. If I have a bad drive, it's going to go red. But before it gets red, it's going to it's going to be a steady yellow if it's going bad. And now it will, pretty soon it will stabilize and we'll have all green lights on it. So that's the Drobo backup. And it, sometimes it takes a while to do the backups because you're writing to multiple drives at the same time. But there's basically the system that I have. It seems a little bit cumbersome when you see the way I'm doing it. But believe me, once you start working with it that way, things go rather quickly. By the way, something else I wanted to show you, I should have done it earlier on here. I just want to show you on a camera. And as I say, your digital cameras, most of them, well, all of your SLRs have it. Can you see this? You will notice.
You're good. Yeah, there's a histogram showing.
You have on your camera. You will have a histogram. You might have to go to your manual to see how to bring up the histogram, but you have it. And like when I shoot a picture, if I'm changing light or something like that, I'll take the first picture and I always look at that histogram. Especially since most of the time I shoot with manual exposure, but even in automatic, you want to periodically take a look at that histogram to make sure that you're getting proper exposure, because especially if you overexpose, you're hosed. You can't do anything to recover the highlights if they're blown out. As I say, if you get a little bit underexposed, no biggie. You can pull it out in post production processing.
Well, cool.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Greg,
Yeah,
we're not
thanks,
seeing,
Bart.
not
We
seeing
appreciate it.
for some reason, Greg.
Yeah, I don't know why either. This time it's a different problem from before. Let me
Okay.
ask you, when I click on this, do you see the Apple logo? Does that show up?
Yeah, the Orange Apple Computer Club.
But when I click back over here, I see my FaceTime camera's coming back on, but I don't see myself. So who knows? Must be the blank impression that I leave everybody, I guess.
Ha ha ha.
I guess Philip is no longer online with us. He was with us up to a few minutes ago. I hated to interrupt him, but I didn't want Allison and Steve having to wait for us when we could come back to, questions amongst our group at a later time. So I thought their presentation was quite good. I thought she did a great job on that.
Oh, yeah. I really
Boy,
did.
it makes me want to go out and get a brand new iPhone just to be able to get some of those features. So
Easy now, Greg. Easy.
it's not going to happen. I'm good for another 8 months. I do it every other year, and my other year is coming up in November. So
no, but I mean, you just bought that RV.
Yeah, that's true. You're right.
I thought you were done with it.
I
thought you were done with RV days.
That was then. This is now. I'm retired and bored out of my mind, Bruce. So I have to do.
That's true.
So.
That's different.
So I mean, we went out to we joined this group called the Leisure Travel Vans Southwest Roadrunners RV Club. Could that be a bigger name? And the guy who is the president of the club is based in San Diego. But so we wanted to have a group that would be like similar equipment. So in case you have a problem, you've always got at least other people to lament with. But they had their annual yearly rally out at Pachanga RV Resort here a couple of weeks ago, and we went out for 4 days with them and enjoyed them. Had some potlucks and then some of us broke off. There's 22 RVs that are going to be going with us on the Alaska trip at the end of May. And so about 16 of the people were there. And so we talked about what we should do, shouldn't do, what we are going to do. The book that Dennis has put, he's built an 81-page document, spiral-bound document. It's going to be finished off, showing where we're going to be at each location for 2 or 3 nights, restaurants, grocery stores, medical facilities, veterinary facilities, fuel, all. He's got that mapped out for every location that we're going to. So,
Greg, I'm just trying to picture 22 RVs all heading up Interstate 5 at the same time.
Here's first off, we're going to meet in Seattle. So we're going to take about a week and a half to get there and visit relatives on the way up and on the way back. And so we'll only be on Interstate 5 for a short time before we get into Canada. But he's thought that out. He's going to break the group into probably 3 groups of 4 and 2 groups of 5. So there'll be smaller mini caravans. And like the first little people who like to get up early and get going, they'll leave at 8. And then the next batch will maybe leave at like 9 and the next batch at 10. That way, if something happens and somebody breaks down in one of the groups, you haven't got 22 vehicles lined up along the side of the highway. You've only got 5 vehicles, which is a little more realistic. And he's gone as far as we've all got UHF radios besides our regular cell phones, but he's even got the group leaders of each one of those groups is even going to have a rental sat phone that they're going to get so that we can always maintain contact amongst everybody, which this man has planned this out pretty well. So we're going to meet again with them in Chula Vista here in about a month from today, for another 4-day get together. And they did a tour of a winery. Marsh and I didn't go, but because we hardly ever drink anymore. But I don't know what they've got planned for Chula Vista. And then I think Marsh and I are probably going to do a 3 or a 4-day trip with some friends of ours, probably mid-April, somewhere in that time frame. And then come about mid-May, we'll be taking off from here and heading up. As far as I know, we're heading up the coast, unless another freeway breaks down or something. Visit relatives she's got in Santa Rosa, then go on up into Washington, visiting my nephew and niece. She's pregnant, so we'll be seeing her about a month before the baby's due. When we get back at the end of July, hopefully we'll get a chance to see her and see the baby. And then we've got relatives that live in Spokane. We'll go visit them. Then we'll come down into Oregon and we'll visit Janine and her husband. And I got friends of ours that we stayed with a couple of years ago in Bend, Oregon. So we'll see if we can stop by and see them. And then eventually we'll end up in Rockland, just outside of Sacramento, to visit Marcia's niece and her husband and 2 kids there. And so we're going to make this trip really count. We'll be gone almost 3 months. But we're already working on next year's trip. Next year's trip, we think we're going to go probably up through up 5 or up 101. We don't know yet. But go take the Trans-Canadian Highway all the way across the country, making sure that we stop at Banff and Lake Louise and the Fairmont Hotel and all that in Toronto and Montreal, and get over into at the eastern end of Canada. My father's father was from Newfoundland, and so our plan is to park the RV somewhere for a day and maybe fly or take a cruise ship, whichever, a ferry ship, over to Newfoundland. We haven't looked into the RV issues and stuff yet, and spend a day or 2 in Newfoundland so we can kind of see that, then come back, start heading down into Maine and Acadia National Park and a few of those things. When we get down to Boston, Marcia's got relatives there. Then eventually we'll get down into the Washington area. We'll be able to see Bruce, hopefully, and Kathy, and friends of mine that I used to work with out here, Mick Long. He was a member of the club years back, Mick and his wife, Susan. Then go down to Florida to Fort Wilderness and maybe Disney's Epcot or Adventureland or whatever the hell it is. And then come across the southern United States. So that'll be about a 4-month trip on that one. And of course, we're going to try to plan it around fall color and all that kind of baloney to really make it pay off. So we got a lot of plans that we hope we'll be able to do. Now, from the standpoint of the meetings, on the Saturdays that we would normally have our meeting, if it's not a travel day for the club, and if I've got halfway decent Wi-Fi and all these camp spots, because we're staying at all campgrounds on the Caravan Alaska trip, they all have Wi-Fi, and I've got a couple of Wi-Fi boosters I've added to the RV. So I'm hoping that I'll still be able to run the meeting from there. If nothing, I'm going to con Steve or Robert into taking over for me on those times. But other than that, I think we're going to be in pretty good shape, and I've got 2 or 3 other things planned for us for next month and the month after that. So hopefully we're going into a good chunk of stuff here in the future. So,
Greg, this of course is all contingent on your assumption that you will not be frozen in
in Alaska, that's true. We are hoping for that. That's right. One of the reasons why we're going during the hot time, it gets up to 70 of the year.
You're assuming with the changing climate.
Well, that's true. That's true.
When the hot time's going to be.
On the plus side, since September, I've lost 72.6 pounds.
Yay!
So
Fantastic.
about this time next year, I will be down to another 100 pounds or so. So
Whoa!
that's just getting easier and easier all the time. So that's a good plus.
That's great, Greg.
That's
Thanks.
fantastic.
I told you about that show I watched while I was
The
in
600-pound guy? Yeah.
Oh, God, I don't know how those people are even alive.
Well, we have one guy in my Monday night weight clinic class that I go to who First time around, Bob lost a couple 100 pounds,
Wow.
and then he was off the plan for a while. I mean, he's in a wheelchair. I didn't know they made wheelchairs this big. It takes 2 people to get him in and out of the wheelchair. He can walk a little bit with a walker, but the wheelchair is so big, it is so wide, it won't fit through even a hospital width door unless it's a double door.
Mhm.
But he's showing up on a regular basis, you know, and he's lost on this go around, he's lost, I don't know, 80, 90 pounds, and I'll bet he's still got another couple 100 to go. So
Wow.
he had to be somebody up in that same realm, Steve.
Yeah.
I'm guessing Bob's probably 10 years younger than me, but at least, you know, better late than never. Better to do something at some point in time than never
Well,
do.
that's the reason I had the bypass. I said, you know, I can have the bypass, and you know, it can go many different ways. There's no guarantee that it's going to work.
Steve, I can tell you right away, looking at you on the camera here, your face is a lot thinner than it used to be.
That's a good.
So we can tell you've lost. Would you say 40 pounds, something like that?
Well, let's see. My highest I weighed was 214. I always weigh myself out of the shower because depending upon what shoes I wear, what I got,
Sure, it makes a difference. Yeah,
all that stuff. I hate it when they, you know, go right in your chart that, oh, you're 6 pounds more than you really are. So that's how I weigh myself. And I started it, the highest I was 214, and I'm down to 168.
well, you're about where you should be, right?
Should be, yeah. I
Good.
keep trying to find people too that would like, if they use 42-inch waists. I got some nice Nordstrom slacks, and I hate to toss them to Goodwill. I'd rather give them to somebody. Anyway, well, listen, I gotta go get some shut-eye or rest, because when you've been hit by a Mack truck, and that's what it feels like,
Sure.
you get
So
exhausted.
tomorrow would work out okay for you if I give you a call in the morning sometime, like around 10
Yeah,
or
give
something?
me a buzz, and we'll see what we can do to get you in, and we'll see what we can do on that thing, because you know, there's got to be some way to get that.
If I
Basically,
could squeeze another year or two out of it, I wouldn't mind doing that. So
well, the thing is that it all matters as to which battery, what model. Do me a favor so I can do a little research. Text me the serial number of the computer that you're talking about.
we'll do that.
Okay, kiddo. Listen.
All right, guys. Anybody else got anything?
No.
All right, well, Larry, Bonnie, Bruce,
Yeah.
Tom, Janine, Donald, Ron,
Come on,
John, Bart, Steve. Nice seeing
Nope.
y'all. I'm glad you were able to join us.
Take care.
Hey, Bruce, give me a phone call.
Okay, I will.
Have a good one, guys.
Not sure when, but I will.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.